He woke up early as usual, the sound of the alarm pulling him from a deep sleep. The world outside was still quiet, with only the occasional car passing on the empty street. He had grown used to this routine, and there was something comforting about it. It gave him a sense of control in a life that often felt unpredictable. The small apartment he lived in was neat, almost too neat, but it reflected his careful and disciplined nature. He made his bed, prepared a simple breakfast, and dressed in the clothes he had laid out the night before. Nothing about this morning was unusual, and that was exactly how he liked it at work. He moved through his tasks with precision and focus. He was competent, reliable, and efficient. His colleagues knew him as someone who could be counted on to get the job done without complaint or drama. He did not seek attention or praise. His satisfaction came from knowing that he had done his job well. While some workers chased recognition or office politics, he preferred to stay in the background, letting his work speak for itself. He was respected quietly, even if he was not the center of anyone's notice. The office was a typical environment, a mix of people with different personalities and ambitions. Some were loud and eager to show off, while others, like him, preferred quiet diligence. He had learned to navigate this environment carefully, observing without judgment and engaging when necessary. His boss was a figure of authority who rarely showed personal interest in employees, focusing instead on results and efficiency. Yet there was something about the way his boss conducted himself that demanded attention. There was an unspoken expectation to perform perfectly. Mistakes were rarely forgiven. He spent his mornings reviewing reports, responding to emails, and attending brief meetings. Each task, no matter how small, received his full attention. He believed that even the most mundane work deserved care and dedication. While others might rush through assignments to finish faster or gain recognition, he focused on doing things correctly, valuing quality over speed. This approach had earned him a reputation as someone dependable, though it also meant that he often blended into the background, unnoticed by many. Lunchtime was a quiet affair. He preferred to eat alone, using the time to recharge and reflect on the work ahead. Sometimes he would chat briefly with colleagues in the break room, but mostly he enjoyed the solitude. It was not loneliness he sought, but clarity and calm. During these moments, he would think about his goals, his responsibilities, and the projects he was involved in. Though the work was demanding, he found satisfaction in the rhythm of his daily life and the small victories that came with completing tasks. Well, as the day progressed, he moved from one responsibility to another. He prepared documents, analyzed data, and coordinated with team members. Each interaction was handled with care and professionalism. He listened more than he spoke, offering advice or assistance only when he felt it was truly helpful. This approach earned him quiet admiration from some colleagues, though others overlooked him, assuming he was just another employee performing routine duties. He did not mind. Recognition was not his goal. Competence was. His dedication did not go unnoticed by everyone. His boss in particular seemed to watch him more closely than he realized. There were moments when their eyes met across the room, brief but purposeful. Sometimes the boss would ask for his input on small matters, things that seemed ordinary but were in fact tests of judgment and reliability. He approached these requests with the same careful attention he gave to all his work, unaware that he was being evaluated in ways that would shape his future. The boss valued precision, discretion, and dedication, and these qualities were exactly what he displayed every day. The routine continued day after day. He arrived early, left late, and maintained a steady pace. There were challenges, of course, moments of frustration or unexpected problems, but he met them calmly. He had developed a methodical way of handling difficulties, breaking them down into manageable parts and addressing each step carefully. This approach allowed him to navigate even complex situations without losing focus. Colleagues sometimes remarked on his patience and thoroughness, though few understood the depth of his commitment. Outside the office, his life was quiet but fulfilling. He enjoyed simple pleasures: a walk in the park, a cup of coffee at his favorite cafe, reading books, or listening to music. He had friends, though not many, and he valued quality over quantity in his relationships. These personal moments provided balance, grounding him amid the demands of work. They reminded him that life was more than tasks and deadlines, even if work was an important part of his identity. He carried the same careful attention to his personal life as he did to his professional responsibilities. Despite the calm and order in his life, there was a sense of anticipation he could not explain. It was not anxiety or worry, but a quiet awareness that change could come at any moment. He had learned to accept that life had its surprises, and he preferred to be prepared both mentally and practically. This mindset allowed him to remain composed even when faced with uncertainty. It also meant that he approached each day with focus and intention, valuing the ordinary moments as much as the extraordinary. The office, too, had its own rhythm. Meetings were scheduled, reports reviewed, and projects progressed according to plan. He moved through this rhythm with ease, not out of habit alone, but because he understood the importance of consistency and reliability. Others may have viewed the daily routine as monotonous, but he saw it as a foundation upon which success could be built. His work, though seemingly ordinary, contributed to the larger goals of the company, and he took pride in knowing that his efforts mattered. Even if the recognition was quiet, as the weeks passed, subtle changes began to emerge. He noticed small shifts in behavior from his boss, brief interactions that seemed more intentional than before, questions that went beyond ordinary work matters, invitations to discuss projects privately, and occasional feedback that hinted at evaluation. He did not yet grasp the significance of these moments, but they were seeds of the story that was about to unfold. His steady presence and dedication had begun to attract attention, though he remained unaware of the true purpose behind it. Even as these changes occurred, he continued to focus on his work. His commitment to excellence did not waver, nor did his preference for quiet diligence. He approached each task with the same careful attention, believing that consistent effort was the key to success. He did not seek favor or recognition. He sought to perform well and contribute meaningfully. This integrity and discipline were what would eventually set him apart, though at this stage, it was simply the natural way he approached life and work. By the end of the day, he reflected briefly on the tasks completed and the challenges faced. There was satisfaction in knowing that he had done well, even if no one else noticed. He packed his things methodically, left the office, and returned to the calm of his apartment. Outside, the city lights twinkled against the night sky, and he felt a quiet connection to the world around him. It was a life of routine and diligence, yes, but also one of purpose and self-respect. Little did he know that the careful, consistent efforts he made every day were quietly preparing him for a moment that would change everything. He arrived at work that morning with the same quiet determination he had every day, unaware that the day would be subtly different. The office hummed with its usual energy, people moving about with their tasks and conversations blending into a background murmur. Yet today, there was a faint sense of change, almost imperceptible, as if the air itself carried the first hints of something significant. He settled at his desk, organized his papers, and began reviewing emails and reports, the familiar rhythm comforting in its predictability as he went about his tasks. He noticed that his boss seemed to pay closer attention to him than usual. There were brief pauses during conversations, subtle questions about his opinions on certain matters, and occasional nods that felt almost approving. He responded naturally, offering thoughtful answers and carefully considering each point raised. While others might have felt anxious under such scrutiny, he was calm, focusing on the work at hand rather than the attention itself. The shift in behavior, though small, began to intrigue him. During a mid-morning meeting, his boss included him in a discussion he had not been a part of before. It was a project meeting involving strategic planning for a new initiative that would require dedication, leadership, and precision. He listened carefully as plans were outlined and then contributed quietly but meaningfully, offering insights that reflected his careful analysis and understanding. His points were noted, and his boss acknowledged them with subtle praise. It was not loud or dramatic, but it felt different from the usual interactions, as if his perspective carried more weight than before. The rest of the morning passed in the usual cycle of tasks and small responsibilities. He coordinated with colleagues, reviewed ongoing work, and managed his assignments with efficiency. Yet a quiet curiosity had begun to grow within him. He found himself reflecting on why he had been included in the meeting and why his input seemed more valued than before. He reminded himself not to read too much into it, focusing instead on performing well. But the question lingered in the back of his mind, creating a subtle tension that added energy to the day. By lunchtime, he had noticed more small gestures that hinted at the growing attention from his boss. Private questions asked casually, subtle invitations to discuss minor project details, and the occasional brief exchange in the hallway all seemed designed to gauge his reactions and abilities. It was almost imperceptible, a test of patience, judgment, and reliability, yet he sensed that something larger was unfolding. He ate his lunch quietly, reflecting on the situation without alarm. He realized that regardless of the reason, he was being noticed, and he resolved to continue doing what he did best, performing his work with dedication and integrity. The afternoon brought further opportunities to demonstrate his skills. A complex problem arose within the team, one that required careful analysis and a steady approach. Others hesitated, unsure of how to proceed or fearing potential mistakes. He stepped forward calmly, breaking down the issue into manageable parts and proposing a practical solution. His colleagues responded positively, and his boss observed silently, evaluating not only the solution but the manner in which he approached the challenge. There was no fanfare, no dramatic praise, but there was acknowledgement, subtle and meaningful. That spoke louder than words. As the day progressed, he began to notice more subtle signs of his growing importance in the office. Invitations to discussions that had once been closed to him, brief acknowledgments of his input during meetings, and quiet but thoughtful questions directed his way all suggested that he was being considered for something. Beyond his routine duties, he did not assume anything and continued to focus on the quality of his work. Yet he could not ignore the sense that his efforts were being noticed on a higher level. It was a delicate balance, a mixture of curiosity and restraint, that kept him both grounded and alert. In a private conversation with his boss later in the afternoon, he was asked for his thoughts on an upcoming project, one that would require careful planning, leadership, and a steady hand. He responded thoughtfully, sharing his perspective based on experience and careful analysis. His boss listened intently, occasionally nodding or asking clarifying questions. And at the end of the conversation, he felt a quiet satisfaction in having provided a useful contribution. There was no announcement, no overt praise, but there was a sense that his input mattered, that he was beginning to be recognized for more than the routine work he had performed quietly for years. Throughout the day, he reflected on his approach to work and life. His focus had always been on performing his tasks well, helping colleagues when needed, and maintaining integrity in every action. Recognition had never been his goal. It had been a byproduct of consistency and dedication. Yet, the subtle shift in attention from his boss made him realize that his approach was beginning to have a larger impact than he had imagined. He felt a mixture of curiosity, pride, and determination, understanding that this could be the start of something significant, even if he did not yet know the full extent. As the day drew to a close, he remained focused on completing his tasks thoroughly. He organized his desk, reviewed the progress of ongoing projects, and made notes for the next day. There was a sense of accomplishment in having met the challenges of the day, handled unexpected issues, and contributed meaningfully to the team. Yet, there was also a quiet anticipation, a feeling that the next step, whatever it might be, was approaching. He left the office with a steady mind and a sense of purpose, aware that his consistent work ethic had begun to draw attention in ways he had not expected. Returning home, he reflected on the day's events with thoughtful consideration. He did not dwell on speculation or expectation, but instead focused on what he could control: his dedication, his approach to challenges, and his commitment to quality. The small hints of recognition from his boss had sparked a quiet awareness that he was being observed and valued. Yet he remained grounded, understanding that consistent effort and integrity would continue to be his guiding principles. It was a day that felt ordinary in many ways, yet it carried the seeds of a transformation that would gradually unfold. That evening, he sat quietly in his apartment, preparing for the next day with the same care and attention he had always applied. He reviewed tasks, thought through potential challenges, and reflected on his approach to work and life. There was a quiet satisfaction in knowing that his efforts mattered, even if recognition was subtle and delayed. He understood that success was often built on patience, dedication, and consistency, and he felt confident in his ability to meet whatever challenges lay ahead. In these moments of reflection, he realized that his life, though quiet and disciplined, had been shaping him for opportunities that required more than skill alone. It required judgment, reliability, and the ability to remain steady under observation. He understood that the attention from his boss was not accidental, and while he did not yet know the full story, he felt a growing readiness to rise to whatever might come. The day had been a turning point, subtle yet significant, marking the beginning of a journey that would test his abilities, character, and resilience in ways he had never anticipated. He went to bed with a sense of quiet anticipation, not anxious, but aware that the future held possibilities beyond his current understanding. He had spent years quietly building his skills, demonstrating reliability and maintaining integrity. Now, those years of effort were beginning to show their impact. He felt ready to continue on this path with the same focus and dedication that had guided him thus far. The day had been ordinary in its rhythm, yet extraordinary in the hints it had offered about the potential to come. He drifted into sleep with a calm mind, prepared for the next chapter of his story to unfold. He noticed it first in small ways, almost like a pattern emerging from the ordinary flow of the office. His boss would ask for his opinion on matters that seemed minor, but which carried an unexpected weight. Others in the office began looking to him for advice on problems they had been struggling with for weeks. He could feel the subtle shift around him, the quiet recognition growing, though it was not announced in words or meetings. It was in the tone of the questions, the way people deferred to him, and in the occasional glance from his boss that lingered just a moment longer than usual. At first he doubted himself. Surely, he thought, the boss must be testing him, seeing how he would respond, perhaps even comparing him with others. He did not assume he was being singled out, but the feeling persisted, and he found himself both curious and cautious. The careful approach he had always taken to his work now seemed even more important. Each decision, each suggestion, each small interaction was an opportunity to show competence without seeking attention. He understood that actions mattered more than words. He trusted that consistency would carry him through. As the days passed, these subtle acknowledgments became more frequent. He was invited to discussions that previously would have excluded him. His input was requested on projects that were high stakes and complex. Colleagues, even those who were competitive or ambitious, began to seek his advice quietly, valuing his calm and reasoned perspective. He noticed the change, but did not let it distract him from his primary focus, performing his responsibilities with diligence and integrity. He found himself observing his own reactions more carefully. Reflecting on how he approached each task and each conversation, there was a quiet satisfaction in recognizing his own growth and capabilities. For years he had worked diligently without expectation of recognition, yet now the world seemed to notice. It was both exciting and unnerving, a strange mix that kept him alert and thoughtful. He realized that this attention was not an accident, and while he did not yet understand its full purpose, he trusted that his consistent work ethic had earned it. The curiosity about why he was being noticed began to grow. He found himself wondering what his boss saw in him that others might have missed. Was it his reliability, his patience, his attention to detail, or perhaps something less tangible? A way of handling problems calmly under pressure? He could not know for certain, but he felt a quiet pride in the realization that the qualities he had valued in himself were being recognized, even if subtly. This reflection did not inflate his ego. Rather, it reinforced his commitment to integrity and careful work. Interactions with his boss became a focus of careful observation. The brief conversations that once seemed routine now carried significance. Questions about opinions or suggestions were no longer casual, but felt deliberate. There were moments when his boss would pause after a suggestion, thoughtfully, and then move on, leaving him to wonder if the input had passed an unseen test. Each encounter became a lesson in patience, observation, and quiet competence. teaching him that recognition often arrives in subtle forms rather than loud announcements. His colleagues also began to notice the shift. Some were curious, others suspicious, but most respected the calm authority he had begun to display. People sought his input on matters that went beyond the routine, trusting his judgment in ways they had not before. He did not assert authority or demand attention. He simply continued to offer measured, thoughtful guidance, allowing his actions to speak for him. The office environment began to feel different, not because of him alone, but because of the respect and trust he was quietly earning during a team project. He faced a situation that tested both skill and patience. A conflict arose between colleagues over the approach to a critical task. He listened carefully to each perspective, asked thoughtful questions, and proposed a solution that addressed the needs of both parties without escalating tension. The resolution was effective, and the team responded positively, acknowledging his calm and reasoned approach. He noticed the subtle appreciation from his boss, the kind that was not spoken aloud, but felt in the nods and approving glances that followed. These small acknowledgments built a quiet confidence within him, reinforcing the value of his steady approach. Even outside the office, he found his thoughts returning to these developments. He reflected on his growth and the recognition he was beginning to receive. It was not pride alone, but a sense of understanding that his careful, consistent work had laid the foundation for this moment. He thought about past experiences, lessons learned, and the skills he had cultivated quietly over the years. Each small decision, each careful action, had contributed to a reputation that was now beginning to manifest in subtle ways. The reflection was both humbling and motivating, inspiring him to continue on the path he had long followed. The sense of curiosity continued to grow, accompanied by a quiet anticipation. He began to consider possibilities he had not thought about before, the potential for greater responsibility, the chance to contribute more meaningfully, the opportunity to step into roles that required judgment, reliability, and leadership. Yet, he approached these thoughts cautiously, understanding that speculation could distract from the work at hand. He maintained his focus, letting actions rather than imagination guide him. Knowing that consistency and diligence would ultimately determine the outcome, small moments began to carry more significance than he had previously noticed. A question asked privately by his boss, a nod during a meeting, a brief acknowledgement of his contribution all became pieces of a larger pattern he was beginning to recognize. He did not yet fully understand the purpose behind these moments, but he trusted that they were meaningful and that his steady approach to work would continue to serve him well. Each day became a balance between observing these subtle signs and maintaining the careful focus that had always guided his actions. His colleagues, too, adjusted their behavior in response to the growing respect he commanded. Some sought advice quietly, others observed his methods to learn from his example. He noticed the changes but did not let them affect his approach. He remained consistent, continuing to perform with diligence, patience, and integrity. The quiet recognition he received was not something he sought or demanded. It was a natural consequence of years of careful, steady work. This understanding reinforced his commitment to the values that had always guided him. One afternoon, the project required a level of analysis and decision-making that tested his abilities. He approached it methodically, breaking the problem into manageable parts, considering each option carefully, and proposing a solution that was both practical and effective. His colleagues responded positively, and his boss observed with quiet approval. The experience reinforced the lessons he had been learning, that patience, careful thought, and consistent effort build trust and respect over time. It also deepened his curiosity about the subtle attention he had been receiving and the role he might be called upon to play in the future as the week drew to a close. He reflected on the gradual shift in perception around him. He felt a growing awareness that he was no longer just another employee performing routine duties. The subtle attention from his boss and the quiet respect from colleagues signaled a change. Though the full meaning of it was not yet clear, he understood that recognition often comes slowly and subtly, rewarding those who remain consistent, patient, and dedicated. He resolved to continue on his path with the same commitment that had brought him this far. trusting that the larger picture would reveal itself in time. Returning home, he allowed himself a quiet moment to appreciate the day's events. There was no celebration, no outward acknowledgement, but a sense of satisfaction settled over him. He thought about the importance of observation, patience, and careful action, recognizing that these qualities had positioned him for opportunities he had not anticipated. The attention from his boss and the respect of his colleagues were quiet affirmations of his approach, validating years of steady effort and integrity. He felt ready to continue, trusting that his consistency and dedication would carry him forward. That night, as he prepared for bed, he reflected on the growing curiosity and anticipation that had begun to occupy his thoughts. He was aware that change was approaching, though its form remained unclear. He understood that the journey would require continued patience, careful judgment, and steady commitment. The subtle signs he had observed were enough to inspire hope and focus, without distraction. He went to sleep with a calm mind, prepared to continue performing with diligence, trusting that the quiet respect and attention he had earned would eventually lead to opportunities that matched his capabilities and dedication. The day began like any other, with him arriving early and moving through his morning routine with quiet focus. The office was still and calm, the hum of activity gentle in the background. Yet he sensed a change in the air, an unspoken tension that suggested something important was about to unfold. His boss, usually reserved and measured, seemed particularly attentive, seeking him out for questions that went beyond the ordinary. There was a sense of purpose in each interaction, a feeling that the day held significance beyond the usual tasks and meetings. He went through the morning with careful diligence, completing assignments and coordinating with colleagues. Yet his mind kept returning to the subtle signs he had noticed over the past weeks. The private questions, the invitations to exclusive discussions, the moments of quiet acknowledgement from his boss, all pointed to something he could not yet name. Curiosity mingled with caution as he continued to work, aware that his actions were being observed, yet determined to remain grounded and focused on the tasks at hand. Around mid-morning, his boss called him into a private office. The atmosphere was calm but charged with expectation. He entered quietly, greeting his boss with a polite nod, and took a seat across the desk. There was a brief pause, a moment in which words hung in the air, and he felt a mix of anticipation and uncertainty. He had been in private meetings before, but this felt different. There was a deliberate weight to the silence, as if what was about to be said mattered more than ordinary office conversation. His boss began speaking, first with measured words, outlining observations and feedback. The praise was quiet but clear. The diligence, consistency, and careful thought he had shown in his work had not gone unnoticed. Every detail he attended to, every decision made with patience and integrity, had been observed and valued. He listened intently, feeling a quiet satisfaction in the acknowledgement, yet still uncertain of the larger purpose. The words were encouraging, affirming his approach to work, but they did not yet reveal the full meaning behind this private meeting. Then came the revelation. His boss leaned forward slightly, eyes steady, and stated clearly that the person he had been seeking for a critical new project was him. The words were simple, direct, yet carried immense weight. He felt a moment of disbelief, as if hearing the news had momentarily suspended the ordinary flow of reality. The project was high profile, requiring leadership, judgment, the steady hand qualities his boss believed he possessed. For years, he had performed quietly, without expectation of recognition. And now he realized that those consistent efforts had positioned him for this opportunity at first. He struggled to process the news. Surprise, pride, and a sudden sense of responsibility washed over him in waves. The quiet dedication that had guided him through routine work had led to this moment, yet he had not anticipated it. His mind raced briefly, considering the challenges and expectations that lay ahead. The gravity of the task was clear, and he understood that success would require every ounce of focus, patience, and integrity he had cultivated over the years. His boss continued, outlining the scope of the project and the reasons he had been chosen. It was not just skill that mattered, but reliability, discretion, and the ability to navigate complex situations calmly. Every observation made by his boss reinforced the qualities he had valued in himself: steady commitment, thoughtful judgment, and the capacity to handle pressure without seeking attention or praise. The acknowledgement was both affirming and humbling, revealing that the quiet work he had performed for so long held significance beyond what he had imagined. He asked questions, seeking clarity about the project's scope, objectives, and expectations. Each answer provided insight into the trust his boss placed in him and the importance of his role. There was no micromanagement, no presumption of oversight. Instead, there was confidence in his abilities, a trust built on years of quiet dedication. The realization settled in gradually. This was not a moment of luck or chance, but the culmination of consistent effort, patience, and integrity. As the conversation progressed, he reflected on his journey. The years of working diligently, without expectation of reward, the careful attention to detail, the calm approach to challenges, and the commitment to doing things correctly, all had contributed to this moment. Recognition had not been sought, yet it had arrived in a meaningful way, grounded in the genuine value of his work. The experience reinforced a lesson he had long known, but never fully appreciated: that quiet dedication often leads to significant opportunities, even if they appear unexpectedly. His boss also emphasized the importance of the project, explaining that its success would have far-reaching consequences for the company. Leadership, judgment, and the ability to guide a team effectively were critical. He listened carefully, understanding that the responsibility was immense, yet also feeling a sense of readiness. The quiet preparation of years had equipped him with the tools needed to meet the challenge. He realized that this opportunity was not just about recognition, but about demonstrating the depth of his abilities and the value of his consistent, thoughtful approach. There was a moment of pause in the conversation, a silent acknowledgement of trust and expectation. His boss's expression conveyed confidence without pressure, a belief that he was capable of rising to the occasion. He felt a mixture of humility and determination, understanding that the opportunity required more than technical skill. It required character, judgment, and a steady hand. The weight of the responsibility was real, yet he felt a quiet readiness to meet it, trusting the foundation of years of consistent effort would support him. After the meeting, he returned to his desk with a mixture of reflection and focus. The revelation had shifted something within him, a sense of purpose, heightened by recognition and trust. He moved through the remainder of the day with careful attention, completing tasks and considering the implications of the project ahead. Colleagues noticed a subtle difference in his demeanor, a quiet confidence and focus that had been reinforced by the acknowledgement from his boss. He did not display arrogance or boast. His approach remained steady and professional, guided by the principles that had always directed him. Throughout the afternoon, he reflected on what had been revealed. The opportunity was significant, but it was also a challenge that required thoughtfulness, discipline, and integrity. He considered the ways he could approach the project, the steps needed to ensure success, and the importance of leading by example. The realization that his consistent, quiet dedication had led to this moment filled him with a sense of purpose, reinforcing the value of patience, careful judgment, and steady effort. He also thought about the broader lessons of this moment. Recognition often arrives in unexpected ways, not necessarily through loud announcements or dramatic gestures, but through trust, responsibility, and meaningful opportunity. The qualities he had, valued integrity, diligence, patience, and thoughtful action, had been noticed and were now being called upon. He understood that success required more than skill alone. It required character, consistency, and the ability to rise to challenges with focus and composure. As the workday ended, he packed his things with a sense of quiet determination. The revelation had not changed who he was or the principles he followed, but it had highlighted the value of his approach. He left the office with a steady mind, reflecting on the journey that had brought him here and the responsibility that lay ahead. The future felt both exciting and daunting, but he trusted in his preparation, his character, and the quiet dedication that had earned him this opportunity. Returning home, he allowed himself a moment of contemplation. The day had been ordinary in many ways, yet extraordinary in the significance of the revelation. He understood that the recognition was not about ego or reward, but about trust and responsibility. It was an acknowledgement of his consistent effort and the qualities that had guided him through years of quiet work. He felt a deep sense of purpose, ready to embrace the challenge and demonstrate the value of dedication, integrity, and steady action. That evening, sat quietly, thinking through the tasks ahead. The project would demand focus, patience, and careful judgment. It would require leadership, decision-making, and the ability to guide others effectively. Yet he felt a growing confidence rooted in years of preparation and consistent effort. The recognition from his boss had illuminated the path, revealing an opportunity that was both challenging and meaningful. He understood that success would depend not just on skill, but on character and the continued application of principles that had guided him all along. He went to bed with a calm mind, prepared for the days ahead, aware that his life had entered a new phase. The quiet work of years had led to a moment of recognition and trust, and with it came the responsibility to rise to the occasion. The journey ahead would test him in ways he had not yet imagined, but he felt ready. He had been prepared, not by chance, but by consistent, thoughtful effort, and he was determined to meet the challenge with integrity, diligence, and steady resolve. The next morning, he arrived at the office with a quiet determination that felt different from usual. The revelation of the previous day lingered in his mind, giving him both purpose and focus. He knew the days ahead would require effort, patience, and thoughtful decision-making. There was a calm sense of readiness within him, built on years of consistent dedication and careful work. He moved through the office, greeting colleagues politely. Yet there was a subtle shift in his demeanor, quiet confidence that came from understanding the trust placed in him. The first step was to fully understand the scope of the project. He spent the morning reviewing documents, analyzing reports, and considering the objectives in detail. Every aspect required careful thought, and he approached it with methodical precision. He broke down the tasks into manageable parts, creating a plan that addressed priorities while anticipating potential challenges. This was familiar territory for him, yet the stakes were higher, the responsibility greater. He embraced the challenge, knowing that success depended on both skill and careful planning. Throughout the day, he communicated with colleagues who would be involved in the project. His approach was thoughtful and deliberate, listening to their perspectives, asking clarifying questions, and incorporating their insights into the plan. He maintained a calm presence, ensuring that each team member felt valued and understood. Leadership, he realized, was not about authority or asserting control, but about guiding others with clarity, respect, and patience. His steady demeanor set the tone for the team, fostering cooperation and trust. As the days passed, he encountered challenges that tested his problem-solving abilities and resilience. Unexpected obstacles arose, requiring quick thinking and careful judgment. He approached each situation calmly, analyzing the options, considering consequences, and making decisions based on reason and experience. Mistakes were few, but when they occurred, he addressed them openly, learning from the experience and adjusting the plan accordingly. His team respected his approach, recognizing that he valued both the outcome and the process. Emphasizing thoughtful execution over hasty solutions, the project demanded long hours, careful attention to detail, and constant coordination. He managed his time efficiently, balancing the immediate demands with long-term objectives. Each day brought new tasks and decisions, yet he maintained focus, never losing sight of the larger goals. His commitment inspired the team, who followed his lead not out of obligation, but because they trusted his judgment and respected his steady approach. The office, once a place of routine, now hummed with purpose and collaboration. Guided by his leadership, there were moments of self-reflection throughout the project. He considered the journey that had brought him to this point. Years of quiet diligence, attention to detail, and commitment to integrity. Recognition had never been his goal, yet it had come in the form of trust and responsibility. He realized that the skills and qualities he had cultivated quietly over the years were exactly what was required to succeed in this critical project. This awareness strengthened his resolve, reminding him that consistency and patience often lead to meaningful opportunities. Progress was steady, but not without difficulty. Team members occasionally disagreed, deadlines loomed, and unforeseen problems emerged. He remained calm, mediating disputes, guiding decision-making, ensuring that the focus remained on solutions rather than blame. His approach emphasized collaboration, respect, and thoughtful execution, qualities that fostered trust and encouraged his colleagues to contribute their best efforts. The challenges, rather than discouraging him, reinforced his belief in careful planning and patient leadership. Midway through the project, a significant problem threatened to derail progress. A critical component was delayed and the team was unsure how to proceed. He analyzed the situation carefully, consulted with relevant experts, and devised an alternative approach that minimized risk and ensured continuity. The solution was effective, demonstrating not only his technical skill, but also his ability to remain composed under pressure. His boss observed the progress, impressed by the calm, methodical handling of the challenge. This success reinforced the confidence placed in him and strengthened the team's trust in his leadership as the project neared completion. He focused on refining results, ensuring quality, and preparing presentations for stakeholders. Every detail mattered, and he remained meticulous, reviewing work, anticipating questions, and ensuring that the team was fully prepared. The effort was intense, requiring both energy and focus. Yet he maintained a steady rhythm, balancing urgency with thoroughness. His colleagues followed his example, motivated by his calm determination and the clear expectations he set. The office environment reflected a sense of purpose and achievement, a testament to his leadership and consistent effort. The day finally came to present the completed project. He led the team confidently, explaining the work, outlining the process, and addressing questions with clarity and composure. The results were met with approval and appreciation from management and stakeholders. The success was tangible, a direct reflection of careful planning, thoughtful execution, and consistent effort. His colleagues expressed quiet admiration, recognizing the value of his leadership, while his boss's subtle nod and approving expression confirmed the trust that had been placed in him. After the presentation, he reflected on the journey. The project had been a test not only of skill, but of character, patience, and steady leadership. The challenges had been real, yet he had navigated them with the principles that had guided him throughout his career: integrity, diligence, and thoughtful action. The experience reinforced a profound lesson that quiet dedication, consistency, and careful effort often lead to meaningful achievement, even when recognition is subtle or delayed. In the days following the project's completion, the office atmosphere shifted. Colleagues acknowledged his guidance and expertise more openly, not through overt displays but through respect and deference. The trust established during the project endured, shaping ongoing collaboration and decision-making. He continued to approach his work with the same calm focus, yet there was a quiet pride in knowing that his contributions had made a significant impact. Recognition had arrived, not through fanfare, but through meaningful responsibility and tangible results. He also reflected personally on the journey that had brought him here. Years of consistent work, careful attention to detail, and steady dedication had led to this moment. He realized that success was rarely instantaneous or dramatic. It often grew quietly, nurtured by patience, integrity, and consistent effort. The experience affirmed his belief in the value of steady, thoughtful work, and he felt a sense of satisfaction and fulfillment that was both professional and personal. In the weeks that followed, he continued to build on the lessons of the project. He applied the same principles to new challenges, maintained his focus, and encouraged the same steady approach among colleagues. The trust and respect he had earned became a foundation for ongoing success, not only for himself, but for the team and organization as a whole. The experience reinforced the idea that meaningful achievement comes from dedication, patience, and the quiet application of skill and judgment. Returning home each evening, he reflected on the day's accomplishments and the progress made. There was satisfaction in knowing that the work mattered, that his contributions had tangible impact, and that the principles guiding him had been validated. He took pride not in recognition alone, but in the understanding that careful, consistent effort leads to meaningful results. The journey had been both challenging and rewarding, and he approached each day with renewed purpose and focus. Finally, he allowed himself a moment of reflection on the broader meaning of the experience. The opportunity had been unexpected, the responsibility significant, yet it had revealed the value of qualities often overlooked: patience, integrity, consistency, and steady leadership. He understood that these traits, cultivated quietly over years, were what had enabled him to rise to the challenge successfully. The recognition and success were not merely personal achievements, but affirmations of the approach to work and life that he had always followed. He went to bed each night with a sense of fulfillment and purpose. The project had been a defining moment, yet it was part of a larger journey shaped by years of careful, dedicated effort. He had met the challenge with composure, focus, and integrity, demonstrating that true value lies in consistent action, thoughtful judgment, and the quiet application of skill. The experience had changed him, not in ego or self-importance, but in understanding the power of steady dedication and the meaningful impact it can have. He felt prepared for whatever lay ahead, confident that the principles guiding him would continue to lead to success, recognition, and personal satisfaction in the journey yet to come.